Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. So today I thought we'd have fun and do a nice easy little cane, which is this one, which we're going to call the triple tick cane. Now when I first started doing this was the pattern that I was going for, and in its cane state it simply looks almost like 3 ticks. Having put them together in this pattern, which I really liked and thought, yes, that's great, I then realised you could put the slices together to create different patterns. So I thought pattern 1, yes, tick. Put them together like this. Oh yes, I like that. Second tick. And then had a go at putting them together so you've got a little spiral or a little pinwheel in the middle. I thought, yes, liking that one as well. That's your third tick. So 1, 2, 3 patterns. So 3 ticks. Therefore it is the triple tick cane. This is one where you can stay as neat as you want to, or you can go a little more loose depending on what your style is with polymer clay. So I'll give you the details of how to create these exact designs, but if you go slightly off piste, that is fine. You'll simply create a new pattern and a new design all of your own. So just relax, enjoy this one, and we'll start by going through the very simple equipment we need just to make the cane for today's session. For today's project, I'm working on a large tile. And as we're only making a cane, there's very little we need in the way of equipment. You will need some form of polymer clay blade. I often refer to these as tissue blades, very thin and cuts through the clay to give no pull down in the design, but obviously be very careful how you use them. I will use a small craft knife, some form of cable tool. This is a 4mm one. I only use this when we're putting the slices of the veneer together. We'll be using a roller for polymer clay. I'll also be using this, which is freely downloadable from www.printablepaper.net, and this I use, and I've printed it out and laminated it, and I will be measuring the size of our cane on this when I'm making the shape and also when I'm reducing. This is inches, it's 4 squares to 1 inch, but obviously if you prefer working in centimetres, you can print it out in centimetres, and I laminate it simply so I can use it again and again. Ordinary graph paper will work if you don't want to do this, or just a ruler, just to give you an idea of the sizes that you're working to. Other than that, obviously I use the pasta machine dedicated to polymer clay use for creating the nice thin sheets of clay. If you do not have a pasta machine, then you can stack layers of playing cards on either side, equal amounts on either side, and with your roller, roll across the clay. I also use disposable wet wipes and paper tissues just to clean my hands and equipment and keep everything clean as I go along. So let's look at the clay we need for today's session. For today's project I'm using Fiona Soft, but all recognised brands of polymer clay will work well for this technique. We're going to make 3 skeiner blends, one from this set, one from this set and one from this set. So obviously choose the colours for your skeiner blend that are going to mix nicely together in your finished piece. I'm working to have all of them having sort of going more towards the blue side of the colour spectrum and have a slight blue tone to them, so I've added blue into these and into this mix as well. I've gone, say, for small amounts, 3 different colours effectively mixing up for each of the skeiner blends. You can of course just use 2 if you would rather. So for the amounts of clay, all of these blocks are 1/4 ounce or 7 grams worth of clay, and you can see there whether I've got the whole one colour or whether I split it into others. And the colours I'm using, so I've got the green selection here, so we've got mint with a bit of tropical green and peppermint, and then the brilliant blue with some tropical green. For the blue mix, I've got virtually all white, but with a tiny, tiny little bit of peppermint. You can see how small it is there to mix up. Then the peppermint and then the brilliant blue. And for the purple mix, I've got white with just a tiny slither of the purple and the peppermint. Nearly all of the purple with a little bit of peppermint and a little bit of white. And then this is all the plum colour. And then to cover the outside, I've gone for 1 ounce or 28 grams of the black. You're not going to need all of this, but it's one of the techniques where it's easier to have more than you need, and then we obviously just keep the rest aside and you can use it for another project afterwards. For the white colours, I'm mixing these because I want a very pale version, so very pale blue and a very pale sort of lilac-y colour. If you are using the Primo or the Kato or the Cernit clay, you might well need to add a little bit more of your colour to make the light colour. In the Fiona Soft, you need very little of the colour to make a very light shade of the colour. So I'm going to mix them all together in these separate blocks to create my 9 colours and obviously have the black done, and I'll put them all through in these separate amounts on setting number 3 of my pasta machine. On my pasta machine, 0 is thick and 9 is thin, and 3 is a sort of medium setting. If you're unsure about conditioning clay, I do have a video with a few tips and techniques on this, and I'll put a link to it in the description below this video. So I'm going to work on the green selection, so I'll show you what these colours come out for, and then we'll start going on that one. So this is how the colours mix up, and as you can see, it just gives that nice sort of blue tone to the greens rather than going down the yellow line, and just fits in nice with the colour scheme that I was going for. Having got the colours conditioned thoroughly and put them through on that setting number 3, so medium setting, I've put them into very rough, as you can see, sort of rectangular shapes, and we're just going to do a skinner blend between these 3 colours. I'm going to do a very simple one where we go diagonally down the 2 outside pieces and centrally down the middle one. You then put both layers together and put them so that you have the large side of the triangle at one side, central stripe, and then the large side of these triangles up that side, and that is our blend. As per normal, I like to fold them over and sort of press in the crease so that when I put it in the pasta machine, all the layers will stick together and we'll start to get that nice blend. If you're unsure about skinner blends, I do have a tutorial with a few tips and techniques, and I'll put a link to that in the description below this video for you. But all we're going to do is keep putting that through the pasta machine, folding bottom to top, fold first each time until we get a nice blend from one side through to the other. And because I've now got 4 layers of clay, I will simply put it through a thicker setting on the pasta machine. So on my pasta machine, that is setting number 2, and I'll bring you back when I've got that nice blend done. Cut it in half, put the 2 pieces on top of each other, pinch the end slightly, put it back through thin end first in the same setting of your pasta machine to give yourself a nice long thin piece. And having done that, I'm then going to put it through my thinnest setting, green at darker end first, to give myself the longest, thinnest piece I can get. As I've always said, if you know your pasta machine shreds or tears your clay as it goes through, simply go down one setting at a time until you get to your thinnest usable setting on the pasta machine. Having got our nice long thin strip, we are simply going to concertina this into a nice block of graduated colour. Now, in order to make life a little easier for yourself, if you can, concertina it so it's quite a thin concertina, so probably about 1/3 of an inch or about 1 centimetre across. And you go all the way down to the other end. If you find that difficult, then just do it in whatever size you want to, and you can adjust the size afterwards. But for the shape we're aiming for, it's just easier to do it to this size to start with. As you know by now, I am not particularly neat when I do this. I do try and make sure I don't have any air trapped in the folds as I go, but mine always tend to go out of shape, and then I'll just reshape them when I get to the end. So don't worry about this one too much. So there we go, very misshapen as you can see. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it flat, and I'm going to just, on my tile, just reshape it slightly so I've got a flatter bottom, and just reshape that end and just give myself a piece which is slightly more rectangular shape, so I can start off. And what we want to do is we want to get this to a particular size, because we are going to want to take off 1/3 going along this way. So get it on your measuring sheet, and a good size to do if you're doing inches is 2 1/4 inches, and if you were doing centimetres, I would suggest doing it to 6 centimetres. Don't worry too much about the width or the height, although if you want to do it exactly the same as me, then it will be probably just over an inch. So mine will be just over an inch 1/4 by 2 1/4 inches long. It'll make sense why in a moment or two. I do try and be neat by keeping the ends quite flat at this point, and I'm also going to make sure I haven't got a triangular shape but a nice flat shape. So you want it to be as even as you can all the way along. If you're not someone who likes being neat, then again, don't worry overly about this. because you can get some nice organic shapes by not being so neat. So it's not one to panic over. Just do your own thing and you'll get a nice result, I think, no matter what you do with this one. So having got it down, so it is, as I say, that 2¼ inches by about 1¼ inch high, so about 6 centimetres, probably by about 4 centimetres high. I'm going to take off 1/3. Now obviously in the inches I've got 4, 8, 9 little squares on this measuring sheet, so I can just take off 3 and I know that is my 1/3 size. We are then going to turn this one that way up, and what we're going to do with this piece is we need this piece now to be the same height as that one. So the easiest way to do that is we're going to squash this way, because what we're looking to do is we're looking to get a piece that's about half the width or half the size of this piece but the same height. And it'll make sense as to why we do this in the design later on. So when you've got it roughly to the same height, just put it together and start manipulating it till it all joins together. And what we're looking for is to have this light point about 2/3, 1/3 down, so it's not in the middle. Once you've got it to a nice rough shape, we are going to get this to a certain size again on our measuring sheet. Now in inches I like to do 2½ inches by about 1½ inches high. If you're doing centimetres, that'll be about 4 centimetres, probably by about I'd probably do something like 7 would be a good thing to do in your centimetres. And we want this nice and even, so if you want to make life easy, just give it a little bit of a roll. So I'm going to roll that way, both front and back. Roll that way slightly, and that way, and let's have a look and see how we're doing. So we're not far off, probably a little bit high, so I'll push it back down slightly. And I want to make sure I've got nice, neat ends, so it is quite a nice, even rectangular shape. And when you've got it done, repeat exactly the same for your other 2 blends. Now, as I said all along with this one, if you don't want to be as neat as this, you don't have to be. Just do the amount of neatness as you want to do, and you'll get a slightly different effect, but it will probably be a very nice effect, so don't worry overly about this one. Having got your 3 slices done, we are now going to coat them with a nice thin layer of black, this side and this side, but we're not going to press it in tightly at all, and we'll come on to that again in a minute. So take your large piece of black clay, get it nicely conditioned. I've put this through on setting number 3 of my pasta machine at the moment, but I want a really nice thin piece because I don't want the black to dominate the design. It's simply to separate the colours in a couple of places. So I'm going to put this one down to my thinnest usable setting on my pasta machine. So again, for me, that is setting number 9. So that gives me a nice, large, thin sheet. And if you're lucky, it should be wide enough to take all 3 blocks. So I now know if I cut a nice straight line along here and put this one down, I can cut along and I'll get the right width of black piece to go along my piece. So I would suggest this next bit you do each one of these separately, because we do not want the black clay at the moment to stick all the way to the sides of this, and I'll explain why in just a second. So watch me do it first and then it'll make sense. So I'm going to put this piece so it goes along the outside, so I want to fit it in place. So make sure there's no air bubbles. Cut off the other end. Fit this piece inside, but we're going to take a bit of this black off in a minute. This is why you're not going to stick it too much down, because you don't want it to stick to the underneath clay, and this is why I suggest doing one of these at a time. Put your piece up along your measuring sheet. So for me, obviously I've got the 2½ inches, and I'm going to find my point, which is about just under 1 inch, where my light point is. So you mark that with your tissue blade. And obviously if you're doing centimetres, then it would be sort of just over about 2 centimetres. And then turning your blade at an angle, so probably about 45 degrees, just cut straight down through the piece. You then turn that way up so that they meet at an angle, and you're going to remove the black from the long outside piece. Okay, and then repeat exactly the same with these two. As I say, for me, I'm suggesting doing it one at a time so you can remove the black easily. So there we have our 3 L shapes all done, and you should have quite a lot of the dark colour left over, and that's fine, just use that for another project. We're not going to use this again at any point, but you see what I mean about having extra makes it easier to put the black around the outside. The other thing is, if you find that your clay is sticking too much and it's very difficult to pull that off, then you could of course just cut the pieces to size first, and then just add the black clay before you put them together. So when they're sort of like in 2 pieces like that, then cover black on the sides that you do want it on, and obviously just leave it on the side, off the side that you don't. So the next thing to do is, with your pieces shaped like that, we're going to cut off an angle from this part of the thing. So again, about 45 degrees, just shave off a bit. You are then going to put them together so that that angle sits on that piece. So you can see there, the blue there is going up against the corner on here. And this piece sits up in there. So they're forming like a little triangle just on their own in the middle there. Turn over and check that they're doing the same on the other side, which they are, so that's fine. And then you are very gently going to persuade the other colours whilst making sure that angle stays in tight. You see there's a fair amount of sort of half pushing in, so you're creating a little bit of movement in there, so there's a little bit of a swirl. It's not a straight movement down. And then just keep going till you get them so they're fitting all the way around. Right, I've just paused what I was doing for a second, and I need to go back on myself. I just want to point out something that is an important part of the design element when we're putting this together. Put it together, as I said, with the triangle in the middle, but what I should have pointed out was that these pieces here are much longer than the width. So can you see there is this gap? Now I know a lot of you will have spotted that, but just in case anyone didn't when you're putting it together, it's that gap. And it's the fact that when you force that down, it pushes it over, that gives the curve into the shape of this piece when we're putting the cane together. So I mentioned earlier, you don't have to be neat, and you really don't have to be neat, but you do need to make sure that your pieces here are longer than the width of your piece going out here, and that is a very important thing to remember. Okay, let's go back now to what I was doing with the original cane. And once we've done that, we are just going to take off, because we want these corner points here to be the points of our triangles. So we are going to shave off however much you've got of your other colour sticking out over the top. And then we are going to, with your finger or thumb, just curve those pieces round, because say this needs to be the corner. Do it one side, turn over to make sure you're doing the other side. And that is your cane complete. Now obviously, as always, it looks messy because I've got the black sort of coming out here, but we can now reduce this down in a nice triangular shape. So I'm going to put it flat on my tile. I'm going to make sure I've got this black at the top, and just press down gently. Rotate, press down so the bottom's getting flatter. Make sure this black's at the point. So I'm going to press the blue down slightly here to make sure I've got that black nice at the point, and it's flat on the bottom. And once you start going, you can simply start reducing it. So all I'm doing is I'm pressing down and then sort of pulling it gently. And we reduce this to whatever size we want before we start taking slices. So I will carry on doing that. I will fast forward slightly because you don't want to sit and watch me doing this the whole time, but you'll see what I'm doing. I'm going to do it until I get it to about 1 inch across each of the faces as I rotate it. And when we've got it down to that size, we can see the pattern that we've got. I'm going to chop down the middle, but if I was doing this by myself, then obviously I'd start at one end and just take slices rather than chop straight down the middle. But just to show you what we've got. Pick it up, put the 2 slices together, and that's the pattern that we're going to get. And obviously, depending which way you put it together, you're going to get the different colours coming to the middle. But this is the great thing about this pattern, because it's a fairly even shape and it's sort of geometric shape in a way. If I take a slice off for you, when we do start to put it together, we can put it together that way, or you can turn it round and put it together that way. So you've got the differing types there. You can also put it together so that it's going exactly the same pattern each time. So something like that, and then you'll end up with these blue ticks sort of going round in a circle, and the same will happen with all the other colours as well. So I will start putting some of them together, and I've actually done another whole batch of this to show you the different patterns that you can get. Once you've got your cane to the right size, take a usable piece. I tend to work on a piece that's not too long because it makes it easier for slicing, and then we're just going to take nice even slices off one end. When you're cutting slices, it's far more important to get the slices as even to each other as you can, rather than concentrating on cutting thick or thin slices. So cut a slice that you feel comfortable with and that you can do consistently across the cane. Putting the slices together is quite simple for pattern number 1. You simply match the middle pattern of your slices, so you've got the green pieces together there. So I've got the pink one here, so I'll simply pick that one up and put it down so the pink's at the bottom. And you could carry on going around if you're just going to do a hexagon. And just work your way around, so that's nice and easy for pattern number 1. And when you do the outer borders, if you want to do a larger one, again, it's quite easy because you just build it up matching the pattern. So this is how it comes out, putting them together that way. And this was the second batch I made, and this one was very slightly different because I hadn't done the light blue in the middle of the blue. I'd done white instead, so you can see it's just that much brighter in the middle there with the white. For pattern number 2, you simply twist it over the other way. So where you've got a light piece, it's going to go next to dark, and the opposite in that way. So for this one, we'd take the blue and turn up so you've got the dark next to the light, and then obviously the same for the pink, working your way around. And that's how you build that pattern up. And again, for the outer layers, exactly the same. You just turn it around so you've got the opposite going as you build that pattern around the outside. Then you end up with that effect. The last pattern is probably the hardest to put together, so I'll just explain how to do it with the 3 pieces here. So we're going to create like a pinwheel with a certain colour in the middle. So for this one, I'm going to do the light blue going in the middle. So I put light blue towards me, and then you just keep adding the pieces together in the same order, always with the light blue together. So we've done 3, you'd then do the 6 to create your first hexagon. You would then continue to do sets of 3 like this, and they then sit against the outside of the hexagon. So let me show you here. So here's the finished pattern. So you can see there we've got our 6 in the middle with the light blue going towards the middle, and then these just sit on the outside. And what it creates is the pink Zs will go together, and the green and the blue is actually creating a Z, but because you've got the pinwheel, you've actually got both the green and the blue going round in the same direction to give you that. And as this goes out, if you wanted to sort of move it further out to create an extra layer around the outside, you would get another pinwheel effect going round as you added it out on the outside. I'm not going to go into too much more detail than that in creating the veneer or adding the slices together in this video, because I cover it in great detail in other videos. So what I've done is I've come up with some suggestions for how you can put these together and create pieces of finished works, and I will link to those in a moment and show you what I've done and add all the links to the various tutorials for you. So there are the three very different and very distinct patterns that you can get by putting this cane together in slightly different ways. And now I'll show you some different colour alternatives. So this one was done doing for the golds here, sunflower yellow, gold and bronze. For the light white colour we've got white, mint and silver, and for the pink colours we've got lilac, raspberry and then the cherry red, the deep cherry red, and that gives you that effect. And this version I've added the extra line of slices around the outside, so we've got a total of 54 slices in this one. And for the blue we've got aqua, the brilliant blue and calypso blue. For the pink we've got the rose, raspberry and plum, and for the green we've got sunflower yellow, tropical green and then olive green, and that gives you that effect. So I thought I'd give you a couple of ideas of what you can do with the pattern and with the cane once you've done it. So the first one is to make sort of pendants, and so what I've done for this one, I've just taken 6 slices of the veneer and created the patterns. So these two are pattern number 1, that's from pattern number 2, and that's pattern number 3. Full details of how to take the slices, put them together and create these pendants I cover in my 2-in-1 hexagon cane tutorial. And if you go to 34 minutes 30 seconds, that's when I start slicing through the cane and putting the pieces together. And I will put a link to that in the video description below. So that's one suggestion, use it to make some nice little pendants. You can also use the cane to cover a phone or a tablet stand. And again, I cover how to do this in a full tutorial. It's the triple blend cane in polymer clay. And if you go to 28 minutes 50 seconds, I talk you through covering the phone stand right from the start. For that particular tutorial I've used a square cane, and in this one obviously I've kept it as the triangular, but that's fine. All you do is you create triangular slices in lines until you create your nice square veneer, and then you use it to cover the phone. And as with the tutorial, all I've done with this one is I have sanded and polished to get that nice high shine on the finished piece. And finally, you can make a very sweet little trinket bowl. And again, I cover the techniques on how to make bowls in my polymer clay bowl with hexagon designs tutorial, and if you go to 26 minutes on that one, it'll take you through starting creating a veneer. As always, I will put the link to that one in the video description below. So there are just a few suggestions of things you can make using this patterned cane, and obviously there are loads more, and you can look through mine and other people's tutorials to see what other things you want to do and how you want to create your pieces. So that's it, that's the end of that tutorial finished, but I hope you'll agree it's a nice simple cane that gives you 3 very distinct patterns and outlooks. I really hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I look forward to seeing what all of you are going to make with your version of the triple tick cane. As always, thank you so much for watching, and a particular thank you to those of you who subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Right, off to do a bit more experimenting, and hopefully I'll see you next time. That's it for now. Bye.